Hello and welcome to the Under Centre podcast. I'm your host, Darmar, and I'm joined by only Fionn Malloy this week because Jake Woolhead is one of the numerous players now who's decided to hold out in the hopes of getting a new contract this year. Now, Fionn, I know Jake's contract is up soon, but you got to believe that the podcast needs to come first.
Yeah, I think so. You have to support the brand. You have to support your teammates here. I'm happy I got my big contract last year, so I'm signed up till 2025. So I can appreciate Jake trying to get his bag, but at the end of the day, the money he's asking for is just outrageous for the talent that he has.
Well, to be fair, we did give him a lucrative offer of one slab of cans every year, so that he didn't go for that. So let's see if he's driving a hard bargain. I think he wants 3. I think we might meet in the middle somewhere, but we'll hopefully by the next show we'll have him back.
Well, look, he keeps to give me pictures of beer, so that comes out of his wages pretty steeply.
True. And nobody wants a picture of Guinness either, so that won't work using those cans for picture bet. That definitely won't work. But look, listen, we'll talk a little bit about football because on today's show we are continuing our off-season series, and joining us today to speak about the New Orleans Saints is Michael Balko from the Michael Balko Show. Michael, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for the invite, fellas. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. I think that's the first time ever I've said the word Michael 3 times in a sentence. So that's at least that's one first for this. But we're delighted to have you on, and we're delighted to have you speaking to us about the Saints and their off season so far. But before we actually get into that, if you haven't already and you're watching us on YouTube, can you please hit that like button and subscribe to the Under Centre podcast? Also, if you agree with some of the points or you want to let us know what the show is like, make sure you comment underneath the videos too. Just helps us in that algorithm, get us up there so more people can find the show too. While you're at it as well, if you prefer the audio side of the show, you can get that as well. Just search for Under Centre podcast wherever you get your audio podcasts, and that's where you'll find us. So make sure you're subscribed to us on there too. On the social side of things, we're at facebook.com/Under Centre pod. We are on Instagram and Twitter, both at the same handle, just at Under Centre pod. That's where you'll find us there as well. Just in case a few people have asked as well recently too, if you are spelling centre, we spell it we call it the normal way. It's the R before the E at the end of centre, not the E before the R. Okay, so just in case you want to make sure you're following the right page. But let's get into some Saints talk. And Michael, I want to actually start with Drew Brees and his announcement that he retired this offseason after 19 years in the league, and actually 14 of them with the New Orleans Saints. I guess it must have been a weird feeling heading into this offseason, either not having Drew Brees on the team or not even speculating whether or not he's going to return.
Yeah, it was definitely weird. I kind of just had the inkling that this was probably his last year. This past year was his last year. And it's a bummer, it's the end of an era, pretty much the entire, as far as I can remember, being a Saints fan, I've had Drew Brees as my quarterback, which is a blessing. It's going to be crazy to see how many Saints fans end up leaving just because Drew Brees is gone now. But yeah, it's just, you know what you got out of Drew Brees week in and week out. And it was a guy who was going to put you in a position to win. And now, as Saints fans, we're just kind of entering a new era where we don't really know what's going on. We don't know who's even going to be the quarterback, and we haven't had that problem for 14 years. So it's going to be interesting for sure. And obviously it was really sad. Drew Brees has done so much for the city of New Orleans and the Saints as a whole. If you know anything about Drew Brees' story, you know that, he's like one of the hardest working dudes ever. And that his impact on the city of New Orleans is far greater than just his impact on the football field. So, seeing him retire and hang up the cleats was super sad for the city as a whole, and for Saints fans all across America and the world for that matter. But it's definitely, it was in my opinion kind of expected. It's just, I don't know. It was expected, but at the same time, it doesn't make it any less heartbreaking.
Yeah, and he is one of those rare quarterbacks as well that has such a personal connection with the city that he played in, because there's not many quarterbacks that can say that, especially with everything that he did during Hurricane Katrina. But then also maybe towards the end of it, he did sort of ruffle a couple of feathers, especially with his comments around the Black Lives Matter movement and his comparison to kneeling at the national anthem.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if that has too much of an impact on like his overall legacy and things like that. I think Drew Brees is always going to just kind of be known as a guy who is always just a community guy and a very just overall well-respected guy. And yeah, I mean, those comments he made were obviously, unsettling, things like that. But I think it was just pure ignorance. And then he obviously owned up to it. And then, he became educated in the matter and just like a lot of people in the world, a lot of us were very uneducated, with the whole movement going on and things like that until we became educated. And then, so it's just Drew Brees, he's in the limelight. He's being asked all these questions, didn't really have time to process an answer, and so he said something out of character, which is, I mean, how many times can you say Drew Brees said something out of character? Probably that's the only time, really. I mean, yeah. So it's like, he messed up, but he also owned up that he messed up, and he came back and, he apologized publicly and he became educated in the matter. And I think he grew a lot from it and learned a lot from it as well.
Exactly. And I think I agree with you, Michael. I think he set a good example, right? We're not all politicians. We're not trained in what we say. And you can have certain opinions, but what we ask of everybody is to go out and educate yourself afterwards and maybe become more informed before you really stick to your guns. Sticking with Drew Brees and the Saints quarterbacks at the moment, I've got kind of two questions for you. The first one is, what did you make of his last season? Definitely he had a really rough start, slowly got into it and found his feet under him again, but I don't know. I heard rumors at the end that his arm strength, he couldn't even get to sign the dotted line. He actually had to sign under the dotted line. Couldn't get that pen up there. Was that a frustration for you watching the Saints last season?
Yeah, he definitely wasn't the same Drew Brees that we'd seen in years past, and it's just kind of a bummer because we kind of wish he would have maybe just hung up the cleats a couple years ago. We'd probably be in much better shape at the quarterback position right now, but we wanted to get that one last ring for Drew, and it never happened. Because we'd probably have Tom Brady right now, because I know that there was a lot of interest in him coming to New Orleans if Drew Brees was gone. But the fact that he never left kind of just, we kind of washed away our chances of getting Tom Brady in town. But with that being said, it was obviously a bummer seeing the quarterback that you've seen just tear up the league for over a decade, struggle to get the ball down the field to a very talented, underrated receiving unit. But at the same time, he was also injured. I mean, the dude literally could have lost his life on the football field. He broke, I think it was 12 ribs or something like that. Still threw a touchdown pass with his broken ribs. I mean, he punctured a lung. I mean, the dude literally, his season could have ended way sooner than it did. And, he came back because he knew it was going to be his last year. Everybody knew it was going to be his last year. And he came back and he still tried to, fight for his teammates, try to, help us get a couple playoff wins, make a run at the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, we got that first playoff win against Chicago, but we didn't get one in the second round against Tampa Bay. So, it's unfortunate, but, at the same time, all good things have to come to an end. So, Drew Brees, I think that his last couple years with the Saints should not reflect on how big of an impact Drew Brees had on the New Orleans Saints as a whole. I know a lot of people like to just kind of judge about the recent performances and things like that. But if you look at Drew Brees' career as a whole and you line it up against guys like Tom Brady, excluding the Super Bowls, obviously, but if you line it up to a guy like Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or, any other quarterbacks that you consider great, his numbers are right up there above theirs in a lot of categories. So I think Drew Brees certainly made his impact felt in New Orleans. And I don't think his last couple of years, while it did stink to see him struggle to get the ball down the field, and it was very visible. I think I'd never seen Drew Brees really, animated or upset in very many interviews in my life. But, seeing him kind of animated in some interviews this past season was obviously very heartbreaking as a Saints fan, because you could tell that he was a little bit messed up mentally and physically. And it definitely stunk a little bit.
And I'm glad you brought up about kind of the state of the Saints at the moment. And obviously, you mentioned everyone knew that it was coming, right? He's getting older. He can't play forever. And we'll touch on later about who the quarterback situation specifically. But are you a little bit frustrated with how the Saints maybe planned out their last 5 years, given that this wasn't a shock retirement and a lot of the struggles they've had in terms of cap space, not just at the quarterback position, but across the whole roster? Is that a little bit frustrating for you this season?
Yes and no. Yes, in the regards of the quarterback position, but no in the regards for the rest of the roster. Okay. And I'll explain. So obviously we've seen the Saints, make some questionable picks in the first round of the draft and then make up for it in the later rounds of the draft by stealing guys like Kamara or Michael Thomas or, guys like that, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, and make up for it completely. But, we have also passed up on guys like Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and guys that we were very high on in the draft process that we thought we definitely, could have added to the roster to groom under Drew Brees for a year or two, and then he would inevitably hang up the cleats, and then we would have our next successor at the quarterback position. So yeah, it's a little bit frustrating in that regard, but especially when you see what Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes are doing now. They both have won an MVP respectively, and Drew Brees has never even won an MVP award. Patrick Mahomes has been to 2 Super Bowls, won one of them. Lamar Jackson's always in the playoffs, dominating on the ground and with his arm as well. So it's frustrating in that regard. I definitely thought a couple years ago when Lamar Jackson was drafted, I thought we were definitely trading up to take him and not take Marcus Davenport. But we, how that turned out. So that's a little bit frustrating. But the thing that's not frustrating is the home runs that we have hit in the past 5 years, like Michael Thomas, like Alvin Kamara, like, guys like that who Marshawn Lattimore, like our roster would not be anything near where it is if we didn't have those guys, 100%. So while it's frustrating that we didn't snag that quarterback, you could argue that we would still be putting up 7 and 9 seasons year after year after year if we didn't make those other picks. So it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, everything happens for a reason. And Sean Payton has given me no reason not to trust him as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. So until he gives me a reason not to trust him in his plan that he has, I'm rolling with Sean Payton and his logic for sure. So it's frustrating whenever you look back and you're like, oh man, we could have had Patrick Mahomes right here instead of so-and-so. But at the end of the day, we would have also had to address that cornerback position and we could be doing the same thing. Everything has a system. And who's to say that Lamar Jackson would thrive in New Orleans Saints system? You know what I mean? Or Patrick Mahomes. I feel like he could probably thrive in any system, but still, you never know because they're playing for Andy Reid and they're playing for John Harbaugh. They're not playing or Jim Harbaugh, whichever Harbaugh it is. But they're not playing for Sean Payton. So, it's a little bit different. Every coach has their own little schemes and stuff like that. So the answer to that question, I guess, is yes and no, because I think, we have gotten some very good talent in the past 5 years, but we also have passed up on some great talent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and let's move on and have a look actually at the upcoming schedule for the Saints, because it is an interesting one that they're going to have with their first year without Drew Brees. They have the early bye week this year. 3 of the last 4 games of the season are going to be divisional games. And you're slated down to face the AFC and NFC East this year. So one tough, one not so tough. I left you on the side which one's going to be tough and not so tough, which division. But what do you make of the schedule overall?
I think it's a winnable schedule. I also think it's a very losable schedule for the Saints. I think they play some marquee matchups. The fact that the Saints have multiple primetime games just goes to show that the Saints are still a team that should be considered in contention, and not a team that's just going to go out there and just be terrible all year long. Obviously, we still have yet to know a lot of things in New Orleans as far as who's going to be the quarterback, who's going to be wide receiver 2, a bunch of different scenarios that we just don't have answers to at this point in time, but that we will have answers to shortly. But like I said, I kind of just trust Sean Payton. I think as long as Sean Payton's is our head coach, I think we have a shot to win every single game. I think the games that we will inevitably lose will be close ones. I don't think we're going to get blown out at all unless Jameis Winston reverts back to his 2019 Jameis Winston and tosses 30 picks for us, which would just be outstanding. But Yeah, I think we got a good shot. I think we have a shot to. I don't know if we'll knock off the Bucks and win our fourth consecutive NFC South division title, but I do think we have a shot at making a wild card spot. It is a 17-game schedule, so the Saints pride themselves on having good depth all throughout their roster. I think they've made some very solid moves. And I think we'll probably see a lot more of Alvin Kamara this year than anything else. I think we're probably going to be more of a ground and pound team. We have 3 really good running backs on our roster, and Alvin Kamara, Latavius Murray, and Ty Montgomery, who have all proven they can play very, very well at a very high level. And I think we could very well be a ground and pound team. We have one of the league's best offensive lines. So for some reason, the quarterback position's a little wishy-washy. I mean, we have 2 running backs who can easily average 4 to 5 yards a carry and can just run the ball down the field all the time if we need to. So I'm not all that concerned. I don't know how well we're going to do. It is a little bit of a tough schedule for sure. But I think we have a shot. I think if Jameis Winston took any pieces of knowledge from Drew Brees last year, I think we have a good shot. So, and who's to say that we won't go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers still? So,
well, Michael, I've been asking our guests recently when we've been talking about the schedule. I know everyone likes to say it's tough, that it's going to be grinding. We might get a few wins here and there. I want you to put your money where your mouth is and tell me a guaranteed win for you guys this season. Who are you going to promise me they're going to beat?
We're sweeping the Falcons 2-0 this year.
Okay. That might be very interesting. They have a nice little tight end they got there.
That's about all they have.
It's true. I'm just trying to rally you a little bit.
Listen, I can't stand by and listen to all this hate towards Calvin Ridley. He's a great wide receiver. He's going to be a true wide receiver.
He's a great wide receiver too. He is a fantastic wide receiver too.
But looking at let's go back a little further and let's actually look at the draft, because the Saints surprised a lot of people by picking Payton Turner, the defensive end, in the first round. But interestingly enough, though, in the 4th round, they drafted QB Ian Book. So are we possibly, and I apologize in advance for this, are we possibly seeing the long-term replacement for Drew Brees? And will the Saints turn the page in a new chapter on their new book? I'm sorry, that's all the book puns I have for now.
You're a professional, Dara. You're a professional. That was fantastic.
Man, I'm usually the one that whips out the dad jokes. but yes, absolutely. I think Ian Book, I actually tweeted it right after we selected Ian Book. Ian Book is the type of quarterback that Sean Payton wishes Taysom Hill would be. You know what I mean? He's much more polished and poised than Taysom Hill, but he has that same exact athleticism, that same, just overall like spunkiness about him, the hard work, the effort, all of that the Saints love in Taysom Hill, but it's in a much more polished and poised quarterback option. The thing about Ian Book is he's a hard worker. And the thing that's kind of unique about the Saints quarterback room is that there's a good chance that we could see Ian Book as a starting quarterback as soon as next season. Not this upcoming one, but the one after. Like the 2022-23 season, we could easily see Ian Book as the team's starting quarterback, simply because Jameis Winston is only on a 1-year deal. We have Taysom Hill, he's on like a 5-year deal, but it's all like team options. So basically we have like the option to just release him after this year and not have to pay that much money for doing it, or we could trade him and things like that. And then whoever we trade him to has like 4 years left of him, or whatever the case may be. There's plenty of options in our quarterback room to where we have some flexibility. The only one that's under like a 4-year deal with like guaranteed money where things get tricky and things like that is Ian Book. And I think he has a very good shot if he can come in and just absolutely just learn the playbook right away and just go out there and emphasize on his opportunities. I think he's got a great shot to be the eventual Drew Brees replacement. And Drew Brees even came out before the draft and was super high on Ian Book throughout the entire draft process. And, everybody was just kind of putting guys like Kyle Trask with the Saints or Mac Jones with the Saints, guys like that, pairing them with the Saints. But, I think the Saints were patient. They waited, got their guy in the 4th round where they wanted him. And, when a guy like Drew Brees is high on Ian Book, you listen, especially, considering everything Drew Brees has done for the city of New Orleans and the Saints as a whole. So you just kind of listen, you go out there and you pick Ian Book, and they did, and I think he's got a good shot. I mean, he can't be much worse than Taysom Hill, to be honest. So as long as he's a little bit better than Taysom Hill, we're off to a good start. But the Payton Turner selection, it shocked me at first a little bit too, but then whenever you consider the fact that it is a 17-game schedule and you have Marcus Davenport, who's only got, like 2 years left on his deal, and then you have Cameron Jordan, who's getting up there in age, and, you start to see his play decline. And then, you really don't have too much defensive in depth, and Payton Turner kind of has that ability to play on the inside D tackle spot as well as the exterior on the defensive end spot. You just kind of look and you're like, well, the defensive line is going to get banged up quite a bit this year, most likely. So, it's a 17-game schedule. That's a whole extra game. And you mentioned the early bye week. So, that second half of the schedule is going to be pretty rough on those defensive linemen and offensive linemen. So adding some depth in that area, especially good depth, a first-round pick type of depth, is very, very, very smart. And Sean Payton's, just like his repertoire, he's always kind of just done things like that. Where like, our bye week is pretty early this year, because you already know that they know the schedule well before the draft. So it's just like they already knew that they were probably going to have an early bye week. So, they're probably like, well, let's just get some good defensive in depth. We have him, and then we got that passing young guy, whatever his name is, from the Chiefs. He's pretty solid too. Yeah. So, I mean, to know Kasim, that dude. But yeah, you notice, you start to see like trends whenever you watch a team closely. I know that you're a Seahawks fan and you see it, and you're a Washington football team fan and you see it. So whenever you watch your team closely, you start to notice the trends that they do. And the Saints always just kind of have a trend of just beefing up their defensive line. So whenever we lost Malcolm Brown and we lost Trey Hendrickson and we lost all those dudes to free agency, it was kind of expected that they were going to pick up a defensive lineman at some point. If they didn't do it in the first round, they were going to do it in the second. So it's almost better that we just went ahead and got the better defensive end, because that kind of opens up doors of opportunity to possibly trade a guy like Davenport or trade a guy like Cameron Jordan, in the near future, to acquire some future draft picks, acquire some future assets. Because if this year doesn't go well for the Saints, they're probably going to just tear it down and start from scratch. So, this year is kind of going to be like a year where we just kind of feel things out, gauge, see how we're looking. And, if we make the playoffs, or if we're still in good shape to make the playoffs, then we probably won't tear it down, and we'll weigh our options from there. But, just adding great players in a position that you've seen great success at over the past 5 years is a great thing to do. So,
And do you think, obviously the next two picks were also defensive picks? Is that a case of maybe Sean Payton looking at his team and deciding, well, aside from the quarterback, I'm very happy with my offense, and the things I need to address are on the defense? Or is it a bit like that Turner pick where he's going, well, look, these are the three best available players, regardless of whether they're at an offense or a defensive position, that we have on our draft board? What way did you see that going? Was it a case of just best available, or I want to specifically address my defense before I do anything else?
I think it was slightly a combination of both. I think the Payton Turner pick was just kind of like best available. Like, I don't see anybody else really worth picking here, so let's just pick Payton Turner. But I think the selections of Pete Werner and Paulson Adebo were like, well, let's see, we have major holes in our linebacker unit. We lost a couple guys this offseason at the linebacker position. So we lost them. Quan Alexander was a huge part of our defense, and he was a very versatile, athletic linebacker for us. We also lost Alex Anzalone, a couple other dudes as well. So we needed to pick up some linebackers at some point. So, that selection right there of Pete Werner is obviously a very, very good pick, because he's got that versatile, versatile linebacker type of deal there. He's very like a hybrid guy too. He can pass defense very, very well. He can tackle really well. It's the kind of guy that the Saints like at the linebacker position. Then the selection of Stanford's Paulson Adebo, I think that one is my favorite pick of the entire draft. And it's because we needed another corner to complement Marshawn Lattimore. But I think the underlying effects of that pick to potentially land a guy like Richard Sherman is very I'll explain it here in a second. All right. So basically, my whole thing about it, I talked about it on a couple other podcasts. I think that the Saints picked Paulson Adebo not just because he's good, but because they're trying to get Richard Sherman in town as well. So, they both obviously Stanford corners. Richard Sherman's always been very vocal about how good Paulson Adebo is. They're also both converted wide receivers, but also Paulson Adebo is a raw prospect. He's not at the level of Richard Sherman. And so Richard Sherman would not have a fight for a job opportunity. You know what I mean? He would start if he signed with the Saints. And then the fact that Richard Sherman and Chris Richard have chemistry together, I just feel like the writing's on the wall as far as Richard Sherman coming to New Orleans. So I think that selection, if you look at it in that spiel, it's just kind of, a secondary that has Marshawn Lattimore, Richard Sherman, Paulson Adebo, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Malcolm Jenkins, Marcus Williams. That's a dang good secondary, if you ask me. That's a secondary that can definitely get you to the playoffs. And then,
Michael, I don't want to burst your bubble, but I'm not sure the Saints have the cash money to get Mr. Richard Sherman over to them. I think that's going to be their big problem.
I mean, we got about $6 million. If we just put him on a 1 year, $6 million prove-it deal, that's all we need him for. We only need him for a year. So, and I mean, the Saints have proven it time and time again. We had negative $100 million entering the offseason, and we didn't really have to lose too much of anything, really. So we got ways around everything, my man. But I mean, hey, man. But listen, it's just the cap space is just a myth out here.
Yes, we've seen that more than anything else this year. Like, these teams can just change any contract and just kick it down the road and find a year where the salary cap goes up and take the lump then.
Exactly.
That's the term of the off season, isn't it? Void years. That's what it was. That's all we've heard. It's off season, trying to work around that cap space. Void years. But let's actually move forward. It's week 1. You're in Carolina. Who is going to be QB1 on that day in Carolina? Because interestingly, I actually saw Chris Sims on Pro Football Talk. He was doing his QB rankings, and he actually ranked Taysom Hill above Jameis Winston, probably indicating that he thinks Hill will start week 1. Is that what you think yourself, or do you think maybe Payton might go for Winston to be the week 1 starter?
Man, oh man. You brought in Chris Sims' opinion onto this.
No, look, I did. I warned you. I said I wouldn't do any gotcha journalism, but I didn't say I wouldn't ask from the opinions of some other people. I didn't say they were good opinions. I just thought I'd bring them on.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Chris Sims' opinion to me weighs about as much as a penny in your hand, but it's okay. Yeah, no. Jameis Winston is obviously a much better quarterback than Taysom Hill. I mean, Taysom Hill, he played in all 16 games, but he only started like 5 or 6 games as the quarterback for the Saints, and he led the NFL in turnovers. So there's that. Jameis Winston, he came into a playoff game against his former team, tossed a touchdown when Drew Brees couldn't. Granted, it was a gimme touchdown. All he had to do was complete the pass, but he threw a touchdown in the playoffs against his former team. He looked a lot better. If you look at the offseason workouts as far as the Saints are concerned, all the big name guys like Traquan Smith, Michael Thomas, Adam Troutman, they're all working out with Jameis Winston. No one's working out with Taysom Hill. I mean, the dude's just sitting out there in Utah, just twiddling his thumbs. I feel like maybe hitting the weight rooms. I mean, I don't know what he's doing, man, but he better not be preparing to be our starting quarterback because oh man, if Taysom Hill's the starting quarterback, I might just literally cry every single Sunday and probably just not even watch the game. And just maybe if I do, I'll just keep one eye closed. And I don't know, man. But I really hope it's Jameis Winston, the former number 1 overall draft pick, by the way, taking the snap. Former Heisman Trophy winner, by the way. The former Florida State national champion, by the way. Man, it sure would be nice. The guy that Drew Brees handpicked and said, this is your team now. I really hope that that's the guy that'll be taking the snaps under center week 1 and not the other guy from BYU who had 4 ACL tears in 5 years in college and is almost like 35 years old or something like that. So I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I love Taysom Hill and everything he brings to our team and our offense as a whole, but I do not like Taysom Hill as our starting quarterback at all. So
it sounds to me, Michael, you're pretty comfortable with Jameis Winston. If we say that the Packers say they're really, really sorry to Aaron Rodgers and he says, okay, fine, I'll stay there. Sounds to me like you're not really interested in getting any other. You'd be happy for Winston to take that starting job and keep it out for the rest of the season. You wouldn't be shopping around for any new faces.
Yeah. I think Jameis Winston has more than earned his keep as far as, getting at least an opportunity to start for the Saints. I mean, the dude hasn't charged us anything really the past 2 years. And I mean, he's a quarterback in the NFL who could have left the Saints and easily have gotten $25 million on like a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, something like that, easily. He was one of the hottest free agent quarterbacks on the market, and he decided to stay in New Orleans, take a massive pay cut. I mean, this first year with New Orleans, to learn under Drew Brees and Sean Payton, he only charged us $1.1 million. Like, that's barely over the veterans minimum. So it's just like, I mean, the dude clearly wants to be in New Orleans. The dude doesn't want to leave the NFC South. You have to remember, that's another thing to weigh in too. Like, he knows the Tampa Bay Buccaneers like the back of his hand. He played under Bruce Arians. He's in his entire career has played against the Carolina Panthers. He's played against the Atlanta Falcons. He's played against the Saints. And obviously he knows the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so he's used to playing in the NFC South. He knows the majority of the dudes who will be taking the field against him. So that's all good. And then, I mean, he obviously got to learn underneath Drew Brees and Sean Payton for an entire year, learn the playbook, things like that. The only thing that's a little bit concerning is the fact that he struggles with his slant route completion percentages is what we're hearing, I guess. But, it's easily things that could be coachable. Sean Payton is a former quarterback himself. He's one of the best head coaches in the NFL when it comes to developing players and to fit his system. So, I mean, honestly, I can't think of the last time a quarterback has ever like genuinely struggled under Sean Payton. I mean, look at when we had Teddy Bridgewater, he even thrived. And I mean, look at him now. Like in Carolina, he was mediocre at best, as their starting quarterback. And now he's in Denver competing with Drew Lock for a starting quarterback job. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, Sean Payton has never really had a bad quarterback on his roster. I mean, even Taysom Hill showed flashes of greatness. You know what I mean? Like, sure, he led the league in turnovers or whatever the case may be, but a lot of those turnovers, I guess, were him just fumbling the ball all the time. So who knows, honestly, but I know Sean Payton really likes the two of them. It's going to be a really, really good quarterback battle. I'm really excited for the preseason this year. But yeah, I don't think it's Ian Book. I think it's probably going to be Jameis Winston. If it's not Jameis Winston, then hopefully it's Ian Book. But it's probably, I hope it's Jameis Winston, but it just better not be Taysom. That's all I know.
It'd be interesting if it is Winston, because there is a lot of upside to having Winston as the starter instead of Taysom Hill, most notably, obviously, with Michael Thomas. I'm sure he is going to see a lot more targets. Now, I'm sure he'll be covered a lot more this year because obviously lost Emmanuel Sanders, who was obviously brought in to be that guy to sort of give Michael Thomas the freedom to sort of, break his reception record he made 2 years ago. Also, on the running back side of things with Alvin Kamara, there's a lot of options to do what Drew Brees did as well with the dumps to the running back to run, and obviously for him to run himself. But with Taysom Hill, yeah, you could see more of a Ravens offense going forward. It would be under Sean Payton. If it was going to be Taysom Hill as a starter, you'd see a lot more QB keeps probably running in, maybe not throwing it as much.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. It's just two completely different offenses, it seems like. And that's why it kind of does scare me, because I really do think that Taysom Hill could be the starting quarterback for the Saints, just because he's been there longer, just because he has chemistry with Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and guys like that. But at the same time, you're seeing Alvin Kamara and Traquan Smith and Michael Thomas and Adam Troutman, all these dudes work out with Jameis Winston throughout the offseason. So it's really just up in the air at this point. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't know the starting quarterback until 2 days before our opening week, if I'm being honest with you. Like, I mean, it'd actually probably be smart to keep the Carolina Panthers guessing like that, to just wait until like the day before. Yeah, I think we should do that. But yeah,
it's I guess on the other side of things, though, it is a good it is good weapons to have, because there are going to be games in the schedule where it's going to be more favorable to throw the ball. So you have Winston, and there'll be other games where it'll be more favorable to, just ground and pound the team whose maybe defensive line and linebackers aren't as strong, but their secondary can, will they be ready to pick off any error that Winston makes? So it'd be good to have the options of both, so it could be fluid in terms of, okay, this game is better for Hill and this game is better for Winston.
Yeah, I think you just kind of have to take it a week-to-week basis. But like I said earlier in the show, I think the Saints are very much going to be leaning more heavily on the running back room that we have. You notice that the Saints really don't have a great receiving unit outside of Michael Thomas, and Traquan Smith, I think, is going to be an emerging star for us, and Deontay Harris is very good as well. But outside of Michael Thomas, really, there's really no proven secondary option, and the Saints really didn't do much to address the wide receiver unit, which just kind of goes to show that they're not really too focused on the passing and air game this year. I think they're going to be more focused on just ground and pound. There was a lot of rumors that Latavius Murray was going to be released this offseason, but that never ended up happening, and I think that's because they want to keep the boom and zoom type of offense with Kamara being the zoom and then Latavius Murray being the boom, kind of like what they had with Mark Ingram a couple years ago. The Saints have always just had success with a power back and a receiving back. And, I think as long as they can just kind of count on those guys to just put points on the board and, just get down the field, keep them in field goal range, just keep the other team off the field as much as possible, run the clock down and then see where you're at in the fourth quarter. I think, that opens up a lot more opportunities for success as far as passing the ball. I think the Saints are going to be a lot more of, running to set up the pass this year rather than, passing to set up the run this year, which is usually what they are. So I think, it goes back to that, are you disappointed with the past 5 years question that you asked earlier? It's just kind of no, because, it sets us up nicely in terms of, being able to, have these weapons like Kamara and being able to run the ball and have those options, you know what I mean? And then obviously having Adam Troutman, who's going to be an emerging tight end and, just things like that. I think, the Saints have built their roster in a way to where it's going to be a run first team. Just Adam Troutman and the other two tight ends that they have on the roster are very much blocking tight ends. They're block first and then catch second, you know what I mean? And then, we put a lot of pride and emphasis on our running back room this offseason and not so much really anywhere else on the offense other than the offensive line. We brought in a couple pieces on the offensive line to beef that up a little bit. So I think that, and then, it's in the whole Jameis Winston throwing interceptions thing. It's hard to tell, you know what I mean? It's hard to tell whether, him using the eye surgery thing as, just an excuse for him throwing 30 interceptions or whether or not that was actually a genuine problem or not. So, time will tell in terms of that. Hopefully he does not throw 30 interceptions. I'll settle with 25, 27 interceptions as long as he doesn't throw 30. I'm just playing. But yeah, I think Jameis Winston's probably the better option overall. I think he's just probably I just think he has more experience at the quarterback position that could come to the Saints. It depends really on if they want experience or if they want athleticism. So I think that's pretty much what it's going to come down to. But I think the Saints will have a pretty successful offense either way. So
perfect. And listen, we're going to ask you one more question before we let you go, Michael. And that's probably the most surprising news of the off season. So Sean Payton is getting a movie made about him and Bountygate. Somebody decided that Kevin James was the perfect man to play the role of Sean Payton. So first of all, who was that person and why haven't they been fired yet? But seriously though, what are you thinking ahead of this movie? Is there something that you're going to be interested in seeing?
I think I definitely got to see it to see if they're slandering the Saints or not. But I think it's gonna. I think it's gonna be a good movie. I mean, it's the most perfect, I feel like NFL movie to ever be released because the NFL hates the Saints and they still try to punish the Saints for something that they did years ago and under an almost completely different coaching staff. So, yeah, I'll definitely watch it. I feel like it's gonna be a good movie. Kevin James is a great actor. I don't know why he should be Sean Payton, but I feel like there's better options. Maybe I could have stepped in and been Sean Payton. You never know. Maybe you guys could have definitely been Sean Payton for sure. I think anybody besides Kevin James could have been Sean Payton, but it's okay.
I think I would have been a better selection if I was the guy who played Kevin James, who was playing Sean Payton. I think I would have been better in that case, but I don't think I would have been as good as playing as Sean Payton. But listen, we're going to wrap it up here, Michael. Thanks so much for taking time to speak to us. Before we let you go, where can people find your socials and your show?
Yeah, my Instagram is michael.balko. You can follow that one. That's my personal account. And then my podcast is the Michael Balko Show. That's on Instagram as well. On Twitter, you see it on the bottom of the screen. It's at Michael Balko Jr. You can follow me there. I post all my podcasts there as well. But other than that, my podcast is just called the Michael Balko Show. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, all that. But yeah, I appreciate the invite, fellas. It means a lot that you guys reached out to me and everything. So it was nice talking some Saints football with you guys. And, I'll root on the little Seahawks a little bit. I'll root on the Washington football team.
But don't worry about it. We will definitely have you back on the show, and probably after that Monday night game against the Seahawks, just to make sure you're not too disappointed. And I think then in week 3 or week 4, I think you face Washington as well.
I'm not sure it's early.
Long.
Yeah, it's definitely early, so you won't be waiting too long. So you get those tough games out of the way, so then you can focus on the rest of your season. But listen, Michael, thanks so much for coming on, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Guys, that is it for this show. Before we go, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the Under Center podcast. Also, if you have liked the show today, make sure you comment underneath and let us know what you think. Or if you have any points that you disagreed with us today on, make sure you comment on that too. All helps the algorithm. Also, the audio version of the show is available wherever you get your podcast. Just search Under Center Podcast. Anywhere you get your podcasts, that's where you'll find us. Facebook.com /Under Center Pod is where you'll find us there. Instagram and Twitter is both the same at Under Center Pod, and that's where you'll find us too. We're on the quest for 1,000 before week 1 of the regular season. We're getting there on Twitter. Instagram needs to, push itself up. So if you're following us on Instagram, go over to Twitter and follow us, and vice versa to help us out there too, so we can get to 1,000 before week 1 of the regular season. But like I said, that's all the time we have for this week. We'll be back with another show later in the week. But until then, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.